Hi everyone, I'm Adam Krasnov. Welcome to the Grolier tonight. It's so great to see so many people here tonight. It's so great to see so many young faces here tonight. A couple more people coming in right now. I have the great pleasure tonight of introducing two fantastic poets, Chen Chen and Rajiv Mohabir. It's my absolute honor, and just wait for people to file in one more second. And reading first tonight is Chen Chen. Chen's second book, Your Emergency Contact Has Experienced an Emergency, is forthcoming from BOA Editions next fall. His debut, When I Grow Up, I Want to Be a List of Further Possibilities, was longlisted for the National Book Award and won the Thom Gunn Award, among other honors. He teaches at Brandeis University. And if I can just wax poetic about Chen for just 1 second, I don't think this is a story that he'll remember at all. But in 2018, which would have been my sophomore year of high school, Chen came to our little tiny public arts high school in Charleston, South Carolina, where he absolutely did not have to give a reading, but he did. And he gave a reading and a workshop after, and I have a very distinct memory of sitting beside a friend of mine and listening to Chen read his poem, Poplar Street, and starting to cry. And I knew he was a great poet then, and I know it now. And he gave us a workshop afterwards, and it was maybe the first time in high school that somebody had spoken to us, a bunch of high schoolers and a bunch of kids, like we were really artists, and what we were doing really mattered, and it was really wonderful. And I'm so glad that Chen's reading here tonight, and yes, I won't talk anymore, but thanks guys.
So I'll read some poems from the new book that's coming out this fall. I'll read one poem from the first book so it doesn't feel ashamed of itself. Yeah. This is called Winter. Big, smelly bowel movements on this blue January morning. From the living room TV, a commercial from our TV company. We're the fastest, the only. Meaning, love us above all others. What makes poop more pungent on certain days? Question for science. From the living room TV, the powerful sight law bark order. Meaning, love us or else. Years ago, a teacher said never to use the word poop in a poem. Today, the icy kiss of the toilet seat wakes me up. Today, I poop, while my boyfriend shouts from the living room, "Did you hear that?" Meaning the atomic scientists who say we are now 2.5 minutes to midnight. But still I marvel whenever poop comes out as one true platonic tube. I am trying to be marvelous, and to make my enemies throw up. I mean, if you shower with soap and eat well, maintaining consistent gastrointestinal health, you should be ready for a wind job or other forms of life. My boyfriend and I are not platonic. From the TV, a white supremacist cites science, barks two sides to every. I mean, up the throat, out the mouth, the fastest, the only way the powerful will let go of their shit. I mean, my boyfriend and I are not into scat, but if you are, I hope your beloved produces the most fragrant citrusy shit. I mean, shit is scat more or less literary than poop. I mean, one winter night I got sick, pooped the bed, and he just got up with me. Helped strip the sheets, carried all to the washer. I kept saying, I'm so sorry, shivering, if so, I'm sorry. But he said, relax, hey, I love you. do remember being in Charleston. The warm weather. And I think we talked about self-portraits. This is called Summer. Why did I skip this to this other thing? Summer. You are the ice cream sandwich connoisseur of your generation. Blessed are your floral shorteralls, your deeply pink fanny pack with travel-sized lint roller just in case. Level of splendiferous in your outfit, 200. Types of invisible pain stemming from adolescent disasters in classrooms, locker rooms, and quite often Toyota Camrys, at least 10,000. You are not a Jigglypuff, not yet a Wigglytuff. Reporters and fathers call your generation the worst, which really means queer kids who go online and learn that queer doesn't have to mean disaster or death. Instead, queer means splendiferously you. And you means someone who knows that common flavors for ice cream sandwiches in Singapore include red bean, yam, and honeydew. Your powers are great, are growing. One day you will create an online personality quiz that also freshens the breath. The next day you will tell your father, you were wrong to say that I have to change. To make me promise I would. To make me promise and promise. One poem. Please take off your shoes before entering. Do not disturb the little strangers upon entering. The quiet, the hush, the please follow the signs. Walk, do not run. Do not fall down or love. Be respectful of the others in this space. Do not offer them food or drink, especially French fries, or any tokens of deep affection. Everyone is trying their best. Please remain calm. You may experience some turbulence, flatulence, a touch of total nauseating love. That is normal, but keep it under control. Look, the head librarian has turned on the fastened seatbelt sign. Please return to your desk and duck and fasten and calm and shh and do not and starboard and roger that and no fries and do not claw the walls saying you love PBS. The other passengers are trying their best to buy tomato soup, to sell their boots, to wear the socks their mothers always buy for them. Do not disturb. Do, however, report any suspicious odors. Crouch to sniff out large and tender clouds. If you smell something, say something. Say, nice socks, nice boots, nice tomato soup, and the clouds will vanish. Do not say, LeVar Burton is my lover, and Mr. Rogers, my dearest friend. Quick, LeVar, Rogers. Let us find what we need in this great country of burning. Okay. Some other poems. I'm gonna read this really new one. This is called Growing Up in New England. I wanted to cry my heart out. I wanted my heart out. Get out, heart, through my eyes, my tear ducts. I cried. I tried other orders. Heart, get out. Get heart out. I wanted to cry in French class, but couldn't remember the words or accent. It snowed a ton. I was still at school. When I wanted to cry during lunch period, I held it all in sometimes. The other times, I cried, my heart completely, definitely out. But then it came back like some creepy doll or unburnable book in redder than ever. Still nothing was as terrible as not wanting even a teensy bit to cry my heart out. During those times, there was nothing to cry out. I never had a heart to begin with. I was already dead. and still I wanted to die. Crying the longest river is better. No crying is bad news. So cry. Cry over how you're just not over it. What's it? How much I do enjoy the quintessentially New England fall foliage. I can't say exactly. I'm crying. But probably it has to do with how I wanted to die, that I thought I should hurry up and die. And oh yeah, there were also days I wanted my mother to die, for telling me she wished her pervert of a son were dead, then wondering why I wasn't finishing my dinner she spent so long remaking for me after I complained about an ingredient. I wanted her to die, though wanted wasn't the term I used in my head. In my head I said, thought about. I thought about her dead. I could imagine it. But all of that was just a softer way to say wanted, to say what my heart said. I cried over her death. I rehearsed wanting her, then saw myself walking under a great many trees, their universe of leaves, falling like the happiest tears, like a free feeling, that joy, yes, can come from an ending. This one I think I do. Yeah, so I've been working on this series of poems that calling the quintessences, and quintessence, basically the noun form of essential, and you'll figure out more on itself. So this is called quintessence caffeinated. I used to believe drinking coffee meant being the kind of person who rode horses, because cowboys. And drinking tea meant being a person who could play volleyball super well, as my mother. One day in the middle of 7th grade, I decided to become a tea drinker. See, I used to think tea drinkers were intrinsically, elementally different from coffee drinkers, and that one day I'd have to pick a tea, and that day had yet to come, but I wanted to be very ready. I used to believe I was no one's cup of tea. For a time I believed I was everyone's. I forget which came first. I think we both did. When did I stop believing caffeine was synonymous with adulthood? Once I was very scientific, then realized how that was just my belief. I'm sure the ancient philosophers and medieval alchemists thought themselves top-notch scientists when they dedicated their souls to the difficult quest for quintessence. Quinta plus essentia equals the fifth element. Not the sci-fi extravaganza, but even more extravagantly, Mercury, some claimed, was that element, a refined one with mega magical properties. For others, quintessence was the name of the ultimate thingamabob, what the heavens themselves are made of, and some innate property within all, from the Milky Way to Mickey Mouse. I used to love Mickey, used to draw him every day, and refused to use my talents for anything else. If it can be said that I have become anything, it's someone who enjoys looking up synonyms for sad. And a Pisces. Astrology. I used to make fun of the devotees, despite the fact that I've always been a Pisces sun, Aries moon, Sag rising. Despite the fact that calendar time is fake. Do you believe those philosophers and alchemists would be depressed, dejected, downright sad to come back, to learn how all their gorgeously asinine ideas have been very, very debunked? Or would they be happy to be again? I used to think true happiness meant being a burly polyglot astronaut. Though whenever I saw a happy astrophysicist, I got confused. See, quintessence exists in today's theoretical physics as a type of dark energy, a great name for what remains a terrible mystery. But perhaps to a patient, well-caffeinated astrophysicist, it is a great mystery. Perhaps those philosophers and alchemists would be overjoyed to join a new quest, to believe not in the holiness of quintessence, but in the hunger for a question, the thirst. Isn't my daily quintessence just caffeine in the form of green or oolong tea? And when I drink coffee, if offered by someone handsome, after all, I have come to believe There are many, many synonyms for happy, as many as there are galaxies. No stars. I'm going to read just two more. Some other ones. These last two are also really good. Two that I just read are super new. Don't know how to feel about them. Okay. This is called The School of You, Y-O-U. Although I thought about writing one that was like E-W. I-E-W as well. But in another life. The School of You. Suppose you live a long life, full of blueberries and jade and blaze. I already messed up. Suppose you live a long life, full of blueberries and jade blazers and dreams of ice skating in the nude and ice skating in the nude. So briskly frisky. A life longer than you plan to live to. You, who was told at 13 to die that you would soon. A silly faggot, not even a white one, just a brief filth, not worth the spit to wipe away. At 13 you knew you wouldn't last forever. Still, you were given little reason to believe you might last another decade, another. How already you were supposed to be not. And yes, I'm talking to myself, saying suppose otherwise. Suppose a life so long and gorgeously silly, viewers will complain about everything left out in your biopic, which will star an actor so handsome, every audience member will gasp in unison upon first seeing him on screen. But despite that, yes, the fans will cry. Not enough about that time he robbed a creperie. Not enough about his years spent painting hippos. Never enough about how that involved both paintings of and paintings on hippos. And how long it took him to realize he was not very good at painting. Then realizing finally that it didn't matter, so long as his very handsome fingers spent all those many years dreaming with paint. And why do only successes get to be smashing? Why not a smashing failure? Yes, I am talking to myself as though it is my birthday, and this is my gift, telling myself what I was never told. Suppose in one part of your still 3-hour-long biopic, it is your 88th birthday. All day you exclaim, I'm 88, at your party. I'm 88 to every friend and fellow 80-something silly faggot. You are wearing someone's worst nightmare, and you are your best. And then the cake, not 88 candles, but still ridiculous number. Flames and flames. Suppose you blow them out, wishing for more blazing, more heat. Suppose you know already there will be. It's such So this last poem is called so there's some Mandarin in this, and I think I'll just tell you if you're not familiar. So I think mainly what you need to know is hongbao is a red envelope. So you should receive that on the new year. You should do this and you. And Xinyan means new year. Lunar New Year. Never did I imagine you gifting him a hongbao. Never did I imagine you gifting him a hongbao on Xinyan, on our Xinyan. Never could I have imagined you standing on our doorstep one cold, bright February afternoon and saying, 这是给他的, then handing me a hongbao for him. So home as well, so unimaginable for you, another. Never imagined my life as a life, not really, not with him, never with a top. Never did I imagine you're not, and never, you're always capital N, no, unraveling. I'm still having trouble imagining you like this. Imagine that, me beaming, weeping for this. A rain droplet of a thing, really. A real glimpse, gleam funny, of flowers. Thank you.
I also have the great pleasure tonight of introducing Rajiv Mohabir. Rajiv is the author of 3 collections of poetry, including Cutlish, yes, Cutlish, right here, which was just released in September of 2021. He also authored the memoir Antiman, which also came out this year in June. His translation of I Even Regret Night, Holi Songs of Demerara, won the Harold Morton Landon Translation Award from the Academy of American Poets in 2020. He teaches in the MFA program at Emerson College and lives in the Boston area. I'm so happy to introduce Rajiv Mohabir to the Grolier.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. My goodness, y'all either really love poetry or you're from New England. It's like, what the hell is going on outside? I'm a recent transplant, clearly. I brought party favors, and these are for you to take. It's a little tiny broadside of a couple of the poems from Cutlish, with the cover and then the thing on the back. So I'm going to leave them up here, and please don't be, as my mother tells me not to be. Don't be shy. And then I also have these little pins for you that are, little machetes, and I'll explain this, and I'll put them here. So please, I don't want to take any back with me to Malden. So please feel free. Anyhow, so I'm so honored and happy to read with Chen. I always adore reading with Chen because, well, Chen is Chen, and we just heard exactly the thing that he does in poetry that is just mind-blowing, and I'm really excited to be here with him again tonight. Gosh, this is what, our 3rd time reading together, I think. And we read at the Asian American Writers Workshop, and then at NYU, and then now at Grolier, which is really exciting. I'm here to read poems from my collection Cutlish, that just came out as has just been said. And Cutlish is a recasting in Guyanese Creole of a cutlass. And a cutlass is something that we use, our families have used for work, but then also for violence. A cutlass in the Caribbean is a machete, right? And so a cutlass, you go into Berbice, which is an Indian settlement made by my familial community. After their indenture contract with the British East India Company had expired, instead of return fare to India, they were given these land grants, and so hence Cutlish. So I'm going to start with a poem that defines Cutlish for you really quickly. Cutlish. Noun. 1. Cutlass. 2. British blade, machete. 3. Colony blister of cane knife. 4. Demerara brown sugar. 5. Kidneys, toes, eyes. 6. 7. Eldorado rum rot. Bhagwati, my Aji, opens a cream soda bottle with her teeth. She pours it into a glass and mixes it with tin milk. Long time, this whole place been a bush all about. I will take a cutlash and clean them. Her Orkney slips from her head. One of the joys of this book is what I'm trying to do with form here. I've taken popular Indo-Caribbean dance music and folk music and transposed it into a space for American poetry, which, it's a thing that growing up I never thought could be, our oral cultures, having such weight in our families, in our home spaces. Sundar Popo, I'll sing this song, I'll sing a little tiny bit of this song, and any West Indian person will know the song that I'm singing. And it goes, Kaise bani, kaise bani, kaise bani, kaise bani, pulaudi bin chattani, kaise bani. It's such a good song. But it was written in the 70s, and by this man named Sundar Popo, who was standing on the crossroads of our colonization. He was fluent in his familial Indian or Trinidadian Bhojpuri. He also spoke Trinidadian Creole English, and then also he was schooled in the British system of in the colonies, Trinidad being one in the Caribbean. So Guyana is just a little bit south. It's on the South American continent. And so it's this form that I migrate into English, using all of these different registers of language, taking my oral culture, my oral poetry that has been derided by my familial community, and put it into words. And so these next poems that I will read for you are based on this form. Now, something that you should listen for is you should listen for a chorus in Caribbean Hindustani, and this specifically Guyanese Bhojpuri. Listen for Guyanese Creole and Creolese expressions, as well as English. This is called the Poco Kid, as in the post-colonial kid. How many of you have spent a lot of time in New York? Okay, so several of you. So Jackson Heights is a place that's like very, very South Asian. And then South Ozone Park is a place that's very, very West Indian. And so people will go in between these spaces. And the speaker, who was a very promiscuous 20-something-year-old, travels in through all of these spaces. Matahet logan bol na sake hai, darasa nahi maral murjha ke. Let's get one thing queer. I'm no Sabu-like sidekick. I'm the main drag. Ram Ram in a sari, salam on the street. I don't speak Hindu, Paki, or Indian. Can't control minds, have no psychic powers. I clip my yellow nails at dusk. On Saturday nights, I shave my head. Forgive me, Shiva. Forgive me, Saturn. I'm coolie on Liberty Ave, Desi in Jackson Heights, where lights spell season's greetings to cover Christmas, Diwali, and Eid, where white folks in ethnic aisles ask, will your parents arrange for your bride? While Ma and I scope out fags, gaff and laugh, while aunties thread our eyebrows. The subaltern cannot speak. Representation has not withered away. So that was a translation of the Bhojpuri phrase that you heard, and that comes from Can the Subaltern Speak by Gayatri Spivak. Keeping an eye on the time. Let's see. Next up is kind of a thinking through of what it means to be a tropical person, and to be living in a state where, in the Caribbean, how people will read British literature and think of Snowfall as being kind of amazing and beautiful until we move to these frozen places and then really suffer for the season. But there's a thing about whiteness coming down and blanketing our tongues and our cultures. And so this poem is called Snowfall in the Tropics. Hum u badariya jaisan bhatak rahe akela jaun pahar aur ghatiya ke upar lena. On every corner a festival of light is sight. Outside the rain of jasmine or ash, snowdrifts. Snow swallows the whole earth. Snow first, then the namaste of daffodil heads breach the ice mirror. Their buried bones gleam silver deep within earth skins. Old poems figure skate to their palettes, carving X marks into thumbs. They're glad for the frost. Turmeric lips bow to the ground. They spell their names in an ever-pallid garland of X's. Outside their homes, rain jasmine or ash. It's Christmas, and I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. It's Christmas, and they call small bananas figs. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high or vales and hills. Yeah, Macaulay, in the 1800s, wrote this about the British colonial system. They wanted to produce Indians who were brown in color, but English in taste and sensibility. And so this is a poem about that kind of cultural erasure through colonial education. And I'm like, I sound so happy about it, don't I? But I'm not. It's like, it's really sad. And so I'm going to read a poem that is called Coolie now. And Coolie is a derogatory word that is used for South Asians who belong to this labor diaspora. Like, I can use it from the inside. And that's even contentious. Some people don't think I should be able to. In my family, it's like when we see a South Asian person, my sister and I will be like, yo, okay, is that person Desi or are they Coolie? And that means, like, are they from maybe Guyana, Trinidad, or are they from the subcontinent more recently than we are? Something that you should know. Aja means it's my father's father. Coolie. Coolie naam da haraya, je humke tej pakadaye, Cutlish jason kate humke gainava me aike. With his whip scar, iron shackle name, Aja, whole contract bound, whole day cut cane. Come night, he drink up rum fisso until he wind up and pitch in a trench black water and cry, "Oh manager," until sugar and pressure claim he too I. The background manager laughwi, so come, so don't. I was born a crab dog devotee of the silent God, the jungle God, the God crosser of seas. White tongues licked the sweet Demerara of my sores. Now, stateside, Americans erase my surf story. Call me Indian. Can't they hear Kalapani in my voice? My breath's marine layer when I say. They made us hold the name Huli. Like a cutlass, it bit us coming to Guyana. Moving from my grandfather to my father. You know, nobody is spared here. This next poem is called Nimak Haram. And this word in Bhojpuri means somebody who is like a traitor to you. In Hindi or Urdu, the word is namak haram. Namak being salt and haram being something that is that you shouldn't be doing. So it's a special kind of curse that if you are, if somebody has done you something solid and you turn around and stab them in the back, then that makes you a very, very bad person because they've given you salt. Nimak haram. My trusting love, my father, feet still warm from circling the sacred fire, poured burnt engine oil into a gopher tortoise's hole. The earth drank its own blood. He planted an orange tree meters away. Its fruit was night, so he drowned it in the blue crystals that meant to fertilize, but its leaves browned. Instead of blessing it, he cursed the son his body made. May you never bear fruit. May you be thrown out and trampled by men. I am all salt and saltless. What can oil-soaked earth bear? God the Father sang me a lullaby. Nimak haram, I've given you the kingdom. You've given me a snake. My simple love, give me the swallow of your chest, and I will crush it in my fist. And that's exactly what a Nimak haram would do. So this poem is called Guide. And it's based on the 1965 Bollywood film called Guide, based on the R.K. Narayan book of the same title, Guide. And it stars Wahida Rahman and Devanand. And some things that you should know, like religious tensions in South Asia and in South Asian spaces between Hindus and Muslims are ongoing. Hindu fascists are oppressing Muslims in the geopolitical borders of India, as well as in Hindu spaces. So, anti-Muslim sentiment exists everywhere. One of the beautiful things about this movie is that the guide himself moves in between communities. And one thing that you'll hear in this poem is the name Ram and Rahim. Ram is a Hindu moniker for God, or one of the incarnations of Lord Vishnu. And Rahim is one of the 99 names of God in the Muslim traditions. So this poem is called Guide. In the desert, if I say Ram or Rahim, will the clouds break into a steady drum? If sky cracks, I will sing for you, stamp my feet into rhythm. What if I said, even in night, where your hair's perfume torments, that I am still parched? There are no lowly births. Clouds too begin first, a sea. Would you believe that I could leave the world drawn up by the sun, a saint, me, a sham of a man? I watched you dance like a cobra. What does it take to be so bewitched by spirit? I spend the dark with whiskey, making a mask of withered roses. How quickly a shadow can pass, and you become a stranger. So kind of following this spiritual thread, thinking about interreligious saints, because in South Asian tradition, a lot of the holy people don't actually subscribe to any kind of religious dogmatic faith. One such poet who, I've been bewitched by is the medieval bhakti or devotional poet Kabira, who was said to be both Muslim and Hindu. And this is a poem called Kabira, based like in the vein of Kabir. I, in the poem, say that Kabir wrote this, but I mean that's part of the tradition of Kabir, is that anyone can write a poem and say that Kabir writes it, as long as you have the feeling of what Kabir is getting across. So this is my attempt at a bhajan or a holy prayer, Kabira. Hatelian ke mehendi halki hoy ke gaya, is sarirwa me bhalaka tikhav. You will your house of clay and breath a fortress. One day, ash and smoke will play fire games in your courtyard. Remember, this hovel is of 5 senses. Does wind stay trapped in a room when its windows yawn? Without country, it flows as a river water of traceless origin. How can this structure of earth and bone be any kind of home? Says Kabir, however beautiful, gold or silver, when the cage door cracks, what bird stays inside? The palm's mehdi lightens, then disappears. What permanence is in your body? And for my final poem, I will read, it's called May 5th, 1838. Now, May 5th, 1838 was the day that's celebrated in Guyana called Indian Arrival Day, when South Asian people were first brought to the Americas on the Whitney and the Hesperus, 2 ships. My community has survived. There's a lot of colonial and post-colonial fallout, but this is kind of a praise poem for my people. Perawa ke dar par hamar putya julai, ab se log hamke bulai, jahaj bhai. On those first ships, did they know their ash applied evenly actually fertilizes the land-grant fields? We are wreckage, broken planks, history's skipping record, repeating the migrant strain again and against Kalapani ke twist-up face, while the Rakshas of erasure licks its lips. What's born of death? Guyana se nikle hiya ay katir. Long time now, we left that side to Komyaso. Here we grow wild. In Queens, see clumps of bora, long beans wind feral by fire hydrants. We sow bits of ourselves in all corners. Flags on bamboo posts, milk poured into the sea. My granddaughter will swing on the tree branch, and we will call you brother of the ship. Thank you. Should I sit here?
Yeah. We have time for a brief Q&A if anyone has any questions to the poet. Don't be shy.
While you're doing that, I'm going to selfie it. Oh, let's get some.
Oh my God, are we
I didn't ask.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Is this?
How do
Hey.
Okay.
I have a question. It's sort of broad, but how does teaching inform your poetic practice?
I don't think that's really hard. I know, Athena, what you said.
How does it inform what now?
How does teaching inform, I guess, the poetry you write?
Yeah. I mean, I say this, Athena was my student last semester, which is why I was like, it keeps, I think of it as like keeping my tool belt sharp. The things that we talk about in class are things that I think deeply about personally. The things that I fixate on, image, metaphor, these are the things that in my classroom take up a lot of space. And I think that what I really like about teaching is that students will point things out about poetry that I wouldn't have had considered otherwise. And just looking at how other people, and how people who are aspiring poets are reading poems so deeply, it's just incredibly moving, and it changes my own process of reading too.
Same. That's not just that. I love the way that you put that with how your own preoccupations, of course, show up in your teaching. So the things you're most obsessed with in poetry, whether that's writing it, reading it. I talk a lot about tone and voice and juxtaposition. I think I always want to be surprised, whether it's writing something, reading something, and that happens all the time in the classroom. And so I feel really fortunate, just really lucky to get to spend that time with students, just being surprised together, and delighted and moved and seeing what students are moved by. Because I think there's a lot, in the publishing world and the editing world, that can make you kind of not love poetry, not love being a poet. And so it's great to return to, let's just read a poem out loud together and see, what do you respond to? What changes in the room or in your body from that experience? So it's a great way for me to feel that constantly. Yeah.
Thank you.
If you could tell your younger poets
be like, don't be afraid to sound like you, which I think for a while I was. I was trying to write a very serious and spare kind of poetry, and I'm just an oversharer ultimately. So, yeah, those poems weren't really coming from a real place. They weren't alive, and you know, it was an imitation of work that I really loved and I still love. But yeah, don't be afraid to sound like you.
That's a good one. I'd say something around like let yourself be the geek that you are, and follow the language, you know, or languages. And if you care, someone will care as well. You know, and that was the hardest. I think that's the hardest thing for me, being like, oh, there's like 5 people in my speech community. You know, like what? Who am I writing these poems for? And then I'm writing it to affirm that Rajiv, who was told that, you know, this is not enough, this is not good, this doesn't have space here.
Sorry. How would you get folks who are self-proclaimed like not poets or not into poetry, because poetry is often like super inaccessible, and like when you tell people that you're into poetry or you're a poet, they're like, oh. So how would because I'm asking because my partner is a self-proclaimed non-poet, so how do you connect with people who feel alienated from poetry, and how do you like prove to them that poetry is not about understanding, but it's like what does it make you feel? That was a really poorly worded question.
That's a great question.
Yeah, it really is.
Thank you for asking that. I guess, yeah, I'm still gathering my thoughts, but I can say that by starting with another medium, like starting with like music, for instance, thinking about like lyrics, you know, I often do this recitation assignment in my classes. There's been such a like memorize piece, and I leave it pretty open, like what they can choose, because I want them to pick something that matters to them. And it's so interesting. I've had students in 2 different classes pick. There's that part in BoJack Horseman, the view from what's it?
The view from halfway down.
Yeah, halfway down. And they've recited that, and it's like incredible how much they care about language, you know, from that, you know, scene, from that show. And so I think, yeah, just trying to be open to different like access points, and then to be like, that's poetry, or that's related to poetry. So, you know, why not, you know, try, you know, reading this piece that's similar to that, or about a similar subject, and just like try to create that kind of like meeting point, where they don't see it as so separate from everything else in their lives. It's like, oh, that's a different category of reading, of art, of experience that I just can't access. But instead, like, showing how poetry is a part of so many other, you know, cultural activities, political activities, and like everyday life. You know, it's not some like rarefied thing all the time. So,
Yeah, that's fabulous. Yeah, starting with a different medium, that's true. Like music, that's a really great way to draw folks in. I think like a lot of the problem is that like a huge part of the problem that I've encountered when folks are like this, it's because in high school, the poetry that people read, they're like taught to like dissect and to like see like, okay, what's the one-to-one correlation between this image and what does it mean? Yeah, to be cracked. And it's like, people who come to poetry are like, I'm not smart enough to understand this. Well, I mean, it's not really about that. It's not about thinking your way through the poem, but maybe like feeling your way. I tell people to be okay with not knowing. And you know, this is also like, this is fun to talk about, too, because you know, you're sitting here and you are all love poetry to some degree. But you know, there's one thing that you can do is if you're teaching a 307 class, let's say at Emerson, show your students Dinosaurs in the Hood by Denise Smith. And then you'll be like, poetry can do something completely different. It's not what you're expecting. And that's like,
Yeah.
you know, jumping onto the idea of the different medium, it's performance, it's moving, it's political, it's all of these.
Thank you. Just thinking about kind of the personal as political, how do you navigate the relationships between the personal and the political in your poetry? And how do you kind of, write poetry as a reflection of yourself, but also as a reflection of the world? And what does that mean to you? Sorry, it's a very abstract question.
It's wonderful.
It really is. I mean, I guess I could, I'm not, my thoughts are not really organized here, but I do believe that the personal is political, right? I mean, whether that is going to poetry to find answers for ourselves or ask ourselves the questions, or refine those questions, I don't think it's possible to write those poems, if you are being honest and following your language and your thoughts, to have it not be like, personal and political at the same time. I mean, I think about like how actually Chen's poem, about who is super political, right? And how it is very, very personal. And I think that too, for in my situation, thinking about who has the main stage to speak, and what does it mean to be a different kind of voice here, advocating for different things, or thinking about the world in a completely different way. It's not very organized.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, they're inseparable, right? And I think the more closely you attend to something, to like anything in your life, it's going to become the world that we live in. They're so connected, personal and political. Yeah, I think for me, I can just add, like in terms of process, that if I sat down and thought, oh, I'm gonna write a political poem, I probably wouldn't write anything. Or if I sat down and wrote, and I thought, oh, I'm writing a personal poem. And so I try to write kind of as much as I can, empty my head. No thoughts, just vibes. And, start with something that I really don't know, so not knowing. Right? As a writer too, where I'm like, I don't know where this is gonna lead me, but I just keep thinking about it. Right? It could just be a snippet of a conversation, or a song, or a dance move, a fictional character. And I'll just start with that. And again, it's like just the process of spending time with that thing that you just can't stop thinking about. Those things will kind of really organically, I think, come together.
Yeah, so what you're saying makes me think of kind of like immediacy in poetry. And how like activist poetry is seen as like doing some other kind of thing that's not like received so well. But the thing is, though, if the struggle for clean water is something that you think about, and that it's something that you do on the daily, and it finds its way into the poem, then I think that like it's that same thing. It can be transformative. And I think about the poetry movements in Hawaii that are happening right now with Unavilla, Jamaica, Osorio, these people, and how the spoken word and how the poem moves to move people into action to protect Mauna Kea from the colonial violence that is the United States settler project that is actively desecrating sacred space to the people, and how it's like a fearlessness that goes into being honest about the connection to land, that I think is also one of those things it is political, personal, a tidal wave, a mountain.
I was just like, the poop poem got me thinking. And like, I was wondering, how do you approach subjects that are usually considered a taboo? And also, this is kind of like a two-part question, sorry, but also, I was also wondering what if anything, have you felt like uncomfortable when you were writing about it? Yeah.
You just made me remember. I read that poem, because actually it's kind of old now. She wrote it back in like 2017, and it was soon after the Trump inauguration. I was thinking about that. And I was in Los Angeles at a bookstore, and that was one of the poems I read. And it was like this really small reading, and afterwards this older woman came up to me, and she just put her hand on my shoulder, and she was like, "You're so brave." And like, I know you're talking about the poop poem specifically. She didn't say anything else. That's what she said to me. She's also a little like, "Who are you?" Yeah. Sometimes people's like responses to it, but I don't know. I love taboo. I don't know. And I love thinking about what supposedly doesn't belong in a poem, and like prescriptive advice that I've gotten around that, of like what language or what kind of imagery can't go into. I remember like someone who was in college, it was like a classmate or someone who was like, would you ever put like a cell phone in a poem? And they're like, because they're like whispering it to me. Someone was like, ooh, would you do that? And I'm like, yes. What are you talking about? But we all have like these like, you know, ingrained received ideas about, oh, that's not poetic, that's not poetry. And I'm always like encouraging my students to kind of break out of those boxes too. I don't know if that really answers your question.
Yeah, it did.
Do you have a thought?
I mean, I like what you're saying about breaking out of the boxes. That feels really good. You know, the taboo, and this is like a very personal answer, I guess, to that, is that like the taboo is like also motivating for me to ask questions about and then to write into. Why do these taboos exist? I mean, I don't want to, well, maybe I will quote Cat Stevens, I don't know. Can I do that? A poetry event, is that a thing? You know, but like, you know, there's so many things that we can't say, that we are trained from like your birth. You don't say that. Little people think like, oh my God, you're gonna do this and you're gonna say that. Like, don't do that. Well, what if I did do that in my, what do you call it, creative mind someplace? And what if it finds its way into paper? I mean, poems will reveal this kind of emotional truth, I like to call it. And then maybe try writing a memoir, and then it's like, taboo opens up into whole new dimensions because you're implicating people, relationships.
I'd just add that, I don't feel like, I'm not like sitting down to be like, let's edgy this thing, sing this poem. I mean, just again, the poem as an example, like my partner and I talk about bodily functions all the time. We talk about our gut health, we talk about regularity, we talk about, because it's like, we know each other. And there's that closeness, right, and like intimacy between people, between bodies, and intimacy with your own body, right? And so for me, it comes from like a lived place as well. So it's not just like, oh, like throw this in there, but it comes out of like, this is like what we talk about.
It's also very queer, isn't it? Talking about poop, that's like a thing in your relationship. Yeah. That's
It comes out.
I dig it. Oh, I'll say something about a taboo. If I'm not mistaken, Chen, you read that poem in the Library of Congress in 2017. Is that true? For the Asian American Literary Festival. Yeah, because it was published in a poetry magazine.
Yeah.
And so it was like, speaking of taboo, that's like pretty amazing. So, I sound like a total stalker. I was there too, but I mean, not actually.
The way that you're both talking about it, it strikes me that this idea of taboo is a way of connecting the personal and the political. I mean, that like, what people have told us is taboo is often the thing that is a real part of ourselves that we've been told we're not supposed to, reveal. So I really admire that you're going for it in that way.
Yeah, if I were in the garden, I would have been the first to eat the fruit. For sure.
You're telling me not?
Clearly, that's what I want.
That's great.
Someone should have told my parents. Don't be gay, don't be gay. Gayness.
Think about that more.
Well, Rajiv and Chen, thank you so much for the beautiful
Thank you
reading
all.
tonight. The College will be signing books over here. We have some books for sale. Let's give one more round of applause to the College.